I absolutely love the look of the Caldari Merlin frigate hull. It's one of my favourite ship designs in EVE Online, but I'm not a huge fan of hybrid turrets. So with my love for missiles, my love for shield tanking, and my love for Abyssal Deadspaces, it was natural that I would eventually end up skilling into the Caldari HAWK Assault Frigate. This absolute monster of a ship is incredibly versatile for both PvE and PvP applications, and in this video I'm going to be showcasing how you can use this amazing little frigate to run Abyssal Deadspaces for some really good ISK per hour. It's a fairly cheap hull to build, it's easy to skill into, and you know what? It's just a lot of fun to fly. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, and in this video I'm going to be showcasing my absolute love for the Caldari HAWK. This is, in my opinion, one of the coolest ships in EVE Online. It's just so much fun to fly, and flying it through Abyssal Deadspaces makes some really good ISK per hour in a remarkably cheap ship. We're going to be running Dark Abyssal Deadspaces because as a missile frigate that allows us to ignore most of the negatives of this, but it absolutely can run other types as well, as we'll discuss later. I'm going to show you the fit that I use, I'm going to show you how I fly it, and we're going to talk about why I love this ship so much. Let's get right to it. If you like frigates and missiles, then chances are you have at least a little experience piloting the Caldari Kestrel, because it's considered one of the best entry points for pilots who like that kind of playstyle. From the Kestrel, you may have then upgraded to something like the Caldari Navy Hookbill, a very powerful ship that I've covered elsewhere on this channel, and I will put a link in the description of this video to that video if you want to learn more about that ship. From the Caldari Navy Hookbill, the HAWK Assault Frigate is probably the next logical choice. It is a Tech 2 assault frigate, so you will need Omega in order to pilot this, but if you have Omega, this is an incredibly versatile and powerful ship in order to fly. You'll find that this, outside of Abyssal Deadspaces, which will be the focus of this video, in PvE you can use this to run L1 or L2 agent missions without any issues. The SOE Epic arc is a cakewalk in this vessel. Beyond that, in PvP, I see a lot of these flying in faction warfare, and indeed even beyond that in wormholes I've encountered quite a few Hawks, because the 5 mid-slots allow it to fit a decent amount of tank with propulsion and still have space for scrams and various different propulsion jamming as well, whilst doing all of that. It's a brilliant little ship. This video is going to be focusing on Abyssal Deadspace, primarily Dark Abyssal Deadspaces, and I'm going to be showing you how this vessel can easily solo Tier 1 Abyssal Deadspaces, but can even be used to Tier 2 if you have the right fit, the right equipment, the right skills, and a few implants as well to make things run a little bit smoother. If you do want to go beyond that, a full fleet of 3 of these can actually go as high as Tier 6 Abyssal Deadspaces, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Anyway, with that said and done then, let's jump in and have a look at the fit. When fitting for an Abyssal Deadspace, it's important to know what type of Abyssal Deadspace you want to clear so that you can fit accordingly. Now, because we're going into Dark Abyssal Deadspaces, we need to understand the penalties and the bonuses. The penalties of most Abyssal Deadspaces are a reduction in one of the resistance profiles. If you go into an electrical Abyssal, for example, there is reduced EM resistance on both you and all the enemies. Therefore, you want weaponry that can do high electromagnetic damage in order to exploit that resistance hole. In Dark Abyssal Deadspaces, there is no resistance penalty to you or the opponents. Instead, the penalty is to turret, optimal range, and accuracy fall-off. We're not going to be using turrets, so we don't need to worry about that, but the enemies often are, which means we can now use ranging to our advantage. Therefore, I want to be able to use high-power rage rockets when I'm up close to the enemy to maximise the amount of damage I can do in a period of time, but I want to be able to switch to javelins in case I need to kite. If we've got 8 enemies currently in a room, I don't want to be taking damage from all 8 of those at once. I can fly through the pack and start leading them off into the distance, and then just shoot the closest one, while the ones that are further back in the pack are struggling to hit me because of their reduced optimal and accuracy fall-off. Now, the second part of an Abyssal Deadspace in the Dark format, the bonus, is that everything has a 50% increased flight velocity. Again, this really helps the HAWK because it's a little bit slower, but it does also help the enemies keep a little bit of pace with us. Again, this means we're going to want those javelins in order to go for anything that is orbiting outside of a comfortable range with us. Some of the things like Damavix orbit quickly and sometimes at a 11 kilometers. Because they're orbiting so fast, and missiles kind of then have to curve towards them, it means that a ship that is only 11 kilometers away from you, due to the curvature of that rocket's path, actually ends up being as much as, say, 16 kilometers of range away, so you need to be able to account for that. Javelins are how we're going to do that. Now, in order to use javelins, we need Tech 2 rocket launchers. All 4 of the launcher hardpoints on this Hawk are rocket launcher 2s. I would not even bother flying this Hawk until you can get the Tech 2 variants in there. It just doesn't have the power needed without that. Go back to a Caldari Navy Hookbill or a Kestrel for the time being, whilst those skills train. Now here you can see I've got Scourge Javelins fitted. Now the Javelins give us a range of 20 kilometers, the Scourge obviously are to kinetic damage. I'm also carrying a full load in my cargo of things like, I've got Mjolnir, I've got Scourge, I've got Inferno, and I've got Nova. I've got all of those as Javelins and as Rage Rockets, and I know how to swap between those depending on the enemies that I'm up against. Bit of a learning curve to Darks whilst you understand which weapons you should be using against different enemies, but ultimately the fast reload of rockets does really help with that as well. Now, Abyssal Deadspaces deal a lot of damage, and whilst we can kite, there's a lot of brawling going to be going on here as well, which means we need a decent amount of tank. And with 5 mid-slots and a decent amount of natural shield HP, the Hawk is a natural shield tank. So we're going to start this off here with a small C5L compact shield booster. Allows us to boost up our shields to repair any damage that they may have taken, but we want to make those shields even bigger and have better resistances. So at the bottom here we have a medium FS9 Regolith compact shield extender. That's going to increase our shield HP so that we've got a faster natural regen, and we've just got more shield HP for the enemies to actually cut through before they start dealing permanent damage to our armor or eventually hull. Because we are on a shield ship, it has low electromagnetic resistance. A compact EM shield amplifier just helps us push up that shield resistance so that we're not taking so much damage from anything that deals electromagnetic. And you can see here, 57% shield electromagnetic damage resistance. That's pretty nice. It means that we're not taking too much damage from anything that deals electromagnetic. It doesn't end there though, because of course with the mid slots, because shield tanking tends to be quite capacitor intensive. I've managed to get this capacitor stable by using down here, a small compact lead acid cap battery. That allows us to maintain capacitor stability with this. I still recommend learning to cycle your capacitor. Like if the shield booster is not in use, turn it off, let your capacitor recharge. You should, as long as you're not being muted or anything, you should maintain capacitor stability, but it's still a good practice to get into. Now finally, because we're going into Darks and we have that flight velocity bonus to everything, we've got 1 meganewton Afterburner II on here. This gives us a natural flight velocity, you can see here, 914 meters per second, call it 915 meters per second. We then get an additional 50% velocity on that in total, so we're looking at about 1400 meters per second, which is pretty fast. Obviously the enemies get that bonus as well, but you want some kind of propulsion, and here I don't think a micro warp drive is necessary. In fact, putting a micro warp drive on this ship is both very difficult with the power grid and CPU that we have left available after the shield tank, but also I think it's too much. And that 25% reduction to your capacitor is going to take you out of capacitor stability as well, which just makes things much harder than they need to be. We have 2 low slots, both of these are just going to be Ballistic Control System 2s. Let's get additional damage out of that, and you can see here we've got very respectable DPS from Javelins. Swapping to the Rages gives us actually quite a frightening amount of DPS that we can output as well. For the rigs, the first rig we have at the top here is a small bay loading Accelerator 2. We're using rockets. This allows us to just load things faster and shoot faster. Really, really beneficial, helps us up the DPS and reload times. And then we have a small EM Shield Reinforcer 2, again, just to help keep that shield EM damage resistance all the way up. Fast vessel, good damage, long range that can also be shortened to give you a boost to your damage. Very powerful little ship. But let's showcase it in action. So we're going to jump into a calm dark filament here. Dark obviously is the type that we have decided we're going to fit for in this, but ultimately you could go for others as well, like you could try some of the other ones, but ultimately I think this fit just works really nicely in darks, and they're fairly cheap filaments. Now that we're in the first room, we're going to head straight towards that biocompetitive cache. I'm going to lock onto it, range of 54 kilometer range. I need to wait until I'm 20 kilometers away before I start firing. I'm an idiot and I started launching straight away. and we're in the room with a Spark Grip Tessera. Now that is a cruiser-sized thing. I'm actually comfortable kind of just moving for the loot at this point, not worrying too much about that. We're going to blow up the competitive cache. I'm then going to immediately loot it so that I don't start to slow down too much. You see I do lose a decent bit of speed there, but we pick up quickly. Mouse over where the loot is going to be and get ready to click, 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 click. There we go, loot everything, and now we can start actually shooting the Tessera. Ultimately, I haven't set up an auto-orbit at this point either, so we're going to have to manually set that to a 5-kilometer orbit, but hey, that's fine. Mistakes, kind of thing you learn from, no problem at all. And a lot of this run, I shouldn't actually really be needing to orbit much anyway. Just this being a cruiser, I do want to kind of orbit a little bit close. It also happens that, yeah, I'm using the javelins, I'm well in range of the rages, so I'm just going to quickly reload into those, put the shield booster on, took a bit of damage with that slowdown there, but now we're going to be orbiting. I've got set the orbit to 5,000 meters, but again, due to the agility of the ship, we're going to be pushed a little bit further out than that. Now the rages are hitting, and you can compare that to what you saw on the javelins a moment ago. You see why we swap once we're in ranges like this, because simply put, it's just massive amounts of damage compared to the javelins. It is a significant boost in damage, allows you to punch through something's tank just that little bit faster. Now Tessera's not too much of a problem for this fit. Kind of thing, you do want to take him out fairly quickly, but as long as you're orbiting close and tight, like I am here, they don't tend to hit you all that frequently. You'll find that as this goes on, occasionally I take hits that do push the shield down a bit. The shield booster takes a few cycles to repair that, then suddenly I'll take a decent hit, my shields will drop a bit, and then the boosters just go. That's why I'm leaving the booster running here. There's a part of me that wants to just turn it off for those few seconds, but there's no real need. There's nothing else in here that's providing a threat, and I know I'm going to take a hit at some point or other, so I may as well just leave the shield booster running to repair that. Now you see we've kind of gone low on ammunition on this one. The Tessera should go down in this strike there. Boom, down it goes, so we can now reload everything there. I'm going to put the javelins back in just so that I can start shooting at things sooner in the next room. We're going to move towards the extraction node here as well. Ignore the fact that as I'm trying to use keyboard shortcuts, I hit the Windows key on my keyboard. I wish there was a way I could disable that. I've tried everything I've seen on Google and nothing seems to work, but there we go. Now, once we're in about 20 kilometers range of the extraction subnode, going to start launching missiles. You ideally want to launch just 1 or 2 volleys so you're not wasting them. In this case, the 1 volley somehow isn't enough. We just happen to clip it and not do the full damage required. But anyway, let's loot that, and now we can move towards the next one. I am going to skip ahead here because it's just a 100 kilometer drift to the next extraction node, so let's jump to the next room. Into room number 2 we go then. Took a little bit longer than I'd like, but because that Tessera I kind of want to orbit it, I don't want to just be flying straight towards the loot like I normally do. In fact, in this room, looking at things, we've got an Ephialtes Lancer and a Lucid Watchman. Yeah, we're just going to fly straight towards the biocompetitive cache. Again, we've got our javelins active. I've launched those way too early. Again, I keep doing that. But once we're in 20 kilometers, I will start to blow up that biocompetitive cache, I will loot it, and then start moving towards the extraction nodes to get the additional loot from those. Now, while I'm closing the distance, may as well get a few hits in on those Lancers as well, just to do some damage, but I'm close enough now to blow up that biocompetitive cache in a couple of launches there. Boom, we're going to loot everything, so open cargo, slam that loot button on the loot all, there we go, and start moving towards this extraction node here in the distance. Again, whilst we move towards that, I'm going to start doing some damage to that Lancer. It's not really doing all that much back to me, and being a sleeper ship, it doesn't matter what type of damage I'm throwing at it, because it has unique resistances. At this point, I just want to point out as well, look at how those those rockets look as they launch off this thing. You just get a cloud of ordnance flying straight at your opponent, and I absolutely love that. When I was orbiting in the previous room, orbiting that Tessera, it just looks spectacular, and if you've got headphones in while you're playing as well, it's just an extraordinary feast for the senses. Another extraction node down. This one had no loot in it, which is freaking annoying. There's a part of me that wishes that wasn't possible in Abyssals, but there we go, it is what it is. Now we've got a Lucid Watchman, it's going to be hitting me for a moment, a little bit of a bump there on some of the scenery. Not great. If I had been taking a bit more damage, that could have caused some problems, but as it happens. Right, where's that Watchman? There it is down there. Absolutely fine, no issues whatsoever. It's out of range even of the javelins, so no point stressing about it. Let's just go and get the loot. The Watchman's doing nothing to me, so I'm quite comfortable just gradually running around the room, picking up the loot, and then we'll kill that once I've got the loot and we can start ranging it a little bit better. Cool. Next extraction node down, loot everything. I'm actually going to orbit this one again, 5,000 meters, just to get a little bit closer. As we're closing that range, I may as well swap to Rage Rockets so that I'm doing more damage. Again, I need to be within 11 kilometers, and actually due to how the rockets travel, ideally I really want to be in like 10 or fewer kilometers, so we're going to wait a few seconds whilst we get into range of the Watchman, and then start launching those clouds of rockets. Just look at them. Just look at how they go. It's just so much fun. Just watching this burst of rockets just dance out of your ship and spiral straight at the enemy. I love it. And again, if you've got headphones and sounds, just the whole whoosh and roar of those rockets as they tear off into the distance. This is why I play Eve. This is why I play Eve. And oh, again, we're going to bounce off the scenery. Shouldn't be too much of a problem against a Lucid Watchman, but again, be careful of this kind of stuff. This is the downside of like recording whilst I do this, because I'm paying attention to what I'm saying, not perfectly the environment around me. Not much of a problem in T1s, but if you want to push into T2s with this fit, yeah, you need a lot of focus with that. Same as if you're going with 3 of you doing, say, tier 5s, you should be okay, but at tier 6, you really need to focus. It's possible, but there is sort of a decent amount of risk that you need to really focus. Beautiful explosion in the background there, and again, with that extraction node being a whopping 115 kilometers away, I'm just going to skip ahead on this bit. Moving into the third and final room of this Abyssal Dead Space, let's see what we're up against here. Right, okay. So let's start to move towards that biocompetitive cache. We want to lock that and blow that straight up. Lucid Fire Watcher, Lucid Escort, and Lucid Warden. Okay, load of sleepers. So again, the damage type doesn't matter because their resists are equal across the board. Let's take out that biocompetitive cache first. None of these pose a significant threat to my ship. So once we're in 20 kilometers there, we're going to launch a couple of bursts at the cache. Should blow it up. We're going to hit open cargo so that we keep approaching and don't lose too much speed. And then I'm going to move the mouse down here to the inventory and start spamming where the loot all button appears. So click, 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 loot all, boom, and start moving towards the biocompetitive cache. Now, whilst I'm doing this, whilst I'm moving towards that cache there, not biocompetitive, sorry, that's an extraction subnode, I'm going to be attacking that Fire Watcher as well, just to be doing some damage whilst I'm flying. I am still using the Rage Rockets. No, I'm still on Javelins at this point, so we're absolutely fine to be launching at some stuff in the distance there, like that Warden. Once we get in range of the extraction subnode, I'm going to launch a couple of bursts at that to just destroy it. There we go. Down it goes. Start to loot. And look at that explosion. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Watching explosions is why I play EVE Online. Whether it's me blowing something up or whether it's me being blown up, it's just cool to watch things explode in such a beautiful way. Anyway, we're going to move towards the Origin Conduit and end this run, whilst blowing up the last few ships en route. Haven't even swapped to the Rage here because I don't want to risk it. As you can see, I've gone to 12 kilometers, 13 kilometers. That would have outranged this. The Javelins are doing just fine as it is, as I'm kiting away towards that gate. No point me just orbiting here and trying to get a bit more damage, because I'm then going to have to move towards the Origin Conduit anyway. I may as well just kill it whilst moving towards the conduit. Beautiful little explosion there in the distance, so that once this is dead, I'm already, like you can see here, 12 kilometers away from the conduit. I don't have to now suddenly make a mad dash for the exit. And there we are, that simple. How easy was that? That was like 8 million-isk worth of loot, I think, from that run. A little bit slower than I would have liked because I had to orbit stuff rather than just moving straight towards all of the extraction nodes and loot caches, but that is what it is, you know? It just, that's how it works. Anyway, so stack all there. Yeah, I've still got it filtered to C, but oh well, let's reload all and move back to station. Anyway, folks, that's it for the HAWK. I love this ship to pieces. This is such a cool vessel. I love the design of it. I love how it fights and how it flies. And if you enjoy Abyssal Deadspaces, here's a great fit for you to use that will run tier 1s really easily, really straightforward without having to think too hard. You can run tier 2s with it, but those do require a little bit more of an input. Tier 5s can be done in a group of 3 and tech 6s in a good group of 3 who really know what they're doing. Anyway, let me know how you get on with this. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe for more EVE Online content. Otherwise, thank you for your endless support, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!